I've been working with a lot of families, both perpetrators and victims, trying to teach them how to be better parents, more effective parents. And these are the things that I feel motivate parents to change. And the first one is depersonalizing the batter's behavior. I have found that when you tell them that they're not bad people, they tend to want to listen to you a little bit more. I use a strength-based approach, and then I focus on the children because a lot of them don't realize that their behavior is impacting their children. And when you ask them why they want to change, it's usually because of their kids. And then we're going to concentrate on the abusers and the victim's childhood so that you can kind of get a feel for what that looks like. In depersonalizing their behavior, no one wants to believe that they're bad. And they don't look at their infant child the day they're born and say, I can't wait, you little son of a, till you grow up and I can kick your butt. We just don't do that. And I've been teaching court-ordered parenting classes for about 12 years, and I can count on one hand the number of parents that did not deserve a certificate, okay? When they get in and they find out what they're doing, they really do want to change. They just have bad skills. They're not bad people. I find that it's easier to change what you do rather than who you are. So what I will do is teach you about some of the things that I do. I had a Russian man in one of my classes who was court-ordered by his therapist to come to my course, and he came in with his arms crossed and he did not want to participate. Halfway through the lecture, he put his hands down. By the next week, he was asking questions. By the third week, he was so animated, I called his therapist and said, is this guy pulling my leg? And he said, no, actually his probation officer got mad at me and said, you had no right to court order him to this. This guy not only participated, he graduated, he hugged me and said, thank you, you made me a better father. So I am convinced that if we give them replacement skills, a lot of the perpetrator treatment programs, all they do is say, don't do that, don't hit anymore. But they don't give you the skill that you need in order to be a better parent. Oh, okay, this is... On the strength base, tell them what they're doing right. I have a lot of parents that'll say, is it okay if I do this? And I say, does it feel good and does it work? And if you have both of those elements, then it's okay to go ahead and use it. So a lot of the times parents, when you come from a background of domestic violence, you might not know any different but to hit. So this gives them an opportunity to learn new skills and be effective. Okay, I'm doing it wrong. If you want to, one of the things I do in my parenting class on the first day, I said, I have a no judgment policy. I'm going to just throw out a lot of really good ideas. You can take them or leave them. I get paid either way. Okay, and you know your kids better than I do, so you got enough people on your back. I'm not going to do that with you. And it really breaks down the defenses. And I think that we go in thinking, these are really bad people. And I remember I was teaching actually a group of perpetrators parenting classes, and it was 9 o'clock at night when we got out. I had 6 men walk me to my car. And I looked up and they said, well, we wanted to make sure you were going to be safe. And I thought, the irony, these people are here because they beat other people, you know, and here they wanted to keep me safe. So I think it's really about not knowing what you're supposed to do. We have to talk about emotional safety. I had a woman who was a rager. She was an addict who was in recovery, and she was keeping her child supposedly safe from the perpetrator, yet she was screaming and cussing and throwing things in the room. And I said, you know, you're doing a really great job protecting him from the perpetrator, but who's protecting your child from you? And she went, whoa. And she went into the daycare at that point, and she said, can I just look at my son and apologize? And she really turned around. So I really think it's about not being conscious about what we do. I like to provide simple statistics to them, not charts and flows, but there was one where they had parents in one room and the kids in one room, and they said, has your kids witnessed the violence? And 80% said, or 75% said no, and when they asked the kids, 80% said they did. So they see the black eyes, they see the tears, they see the preoccupation, and we are kidding ourselves if we think our kids don't see that and notice that. I think it's really important that we focus on their childhood. 3 years ago, on my birthday, my mother passed away. And I thought that was really kind of crappy. And a week later was Mother's Day, and my kid missed the flight home. So I was sitting in a restaurant on Mother's Day without my mother and without my kid. And I was feeling I call them PLMs, poor little me days. I was having one of those. And this strange man sat next to me at the bar where I was eating. And I said, if I just don't make eye contact, I'll be okay. Okay? 45 minutes into my dinner, he looked at me and said, I'm a schizophrenic. I've been off my medication for 3 months now. I was sexually assaulted as an 8-year-old, and I have fantasies about killing people. And I was like, oh, great. You know, I'm having the worst day of my life, and this guy comes up, and you have a duty to report or do something when this happens. In the state of Colorado, though, they barely keep them 3 days. Sometimes they go in and come right back out. So I didn't think that was an option. So I looked at him and I said, sir, have you been molested over the last 5 years? And he said, no. What about the last 10? No. Given your age and your size, is it probable that you'll be molested again? And he said, no. I said, then get over it. I said, my life's been 10 times harder than yours, and I don't go around threatening to kill people. You know, one person did this to you. I said, you were 8 years old. You're what, 35 now? He said, yes. You're going to live to be 70. That's going to dictate your whole childhood's going to dictate your life. And so I did a visualization with him. So I'm in this restaurant. He's got his eyes closed, and we're doing this thing. And after he opens his eyes, he goes, you've helped me more in a half an hour than 10 years of therapy. And I put my arm on him, and I said, does that mean you won't kill anyone? And he said, I promise. And so I felt like I did my job, but I think we're failing in therapy sometimes to recognize how childhoods impact the rest of your life. And if you're in that helpless mode and you've never had the treatment in order to get better, how do you know to get better? I mean, some people excel just because they're bright and they can figure it out, but for the most part, they can't. You know, and they need our help to do that. So I kind of like to look at it as a plane crash. If you walked away from a plane crash, would you go around saying, hi, I'm Christina, I'm the victim of a plane crash? Or would you say, I survived and I need to do something about it? So we need to teach them that you don't have to be a victim for the rest of your life. Emotional abuse, I think this is really discounted. You know, most of the victims that I work with, most of the kids I work with said, I'd rather have taken the black eye. When you're called a stupid moron by your parents, that lasts forever. So I think what we need to do is start looking at abuse more seriously in the emotional stages, because I think it's a grooming process, and I think that it gets worse and worse as time goes on. And if we can say that this is abuse in the earlier stages, we can change it. When we wait till I've had situations where a woman had her dog stapled to the house alive when she left her perpetrator. I mean, when we wait till they've lost their ability to rationalize, we've waited too long. We need to get them in these earlier stages. Children are really concrete. When you are fighting as parents and you say, I'm going to kill you, what the child hears is, I'm going to kill you. Not, I'm going to make you feel like you wish you were dead. You know, it's the anticipation of the implied threat. If we can interrupt the precursors, I'm convinced that we can stop this. We just have to recognize it and say that it needs to be different. So that means we have to change our response to it, because we have a professional football player a few years back, I think everyone remembers. He decapitated his wife, but that didn't make him a bad father, and he got custody of his children, okay? And I wonder every day about their emotional stability and what happened to them. You know, how they're going to survive in this world. but we've not used the kids as part of the definition. Witnessing abuse can be more traumatizing. Does anyone know why it's more traumatizing to witness abuse than to actually experience it yourself? Anticipation. You can hear, oh, go ahead. Lack of control. What did you say, sir? Yeah. You can see the black eye. You can hear the screams. Here's two people you love very much, and there's not a thing you can do about it. Okay? So they're saying now that children who witness family violence, 85% of them have moderate to severe symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. That's pretty high. We rate movies and say not suitable for children, yet we're the stage, and they're in the audience, and we're allowing this to happen. Oops. I feel the word power and control has gotten a negative connotation in my mind. I think that this is more the solution than the problem, because every single person in this world wants power and control over their life. There's not one person in this room that can stand. Oh, is there someone in here that says they don't want power and control over their life? No. Batterers, however, don't know how to get their needs met the right way. That does not make them bad. It just means that they don't have the skills that they need to move forward. I've worked with a lot of perpetrators. Once you told them that they deserve to get their needs met, they go, what? Yeah, you don't even have to yell at me. I dated a guy once who yelled at me on the phone, and I hung up on him gently. And he called back 10 minutes later. He said, did you hang up on me? I said, I certainly did. And he goes, I was talking to you. I said, no, you were yelling at me. And I want to hear you, and when you're ready to talk, I'll listen. And he never, in the 2 years that we dated after that, yelled at me again. He just needed to know what to do. He needed to know that it was okay to be heard. So I really feel that it's about learning how to be in control so that they can be productive. They want to be heard, and they don't trust their environment. A lot of these perpetrators have come from an environment, and the reason I'm talking about perpetrators as parents is we can't fix these children until we fix their parents, okay? And I have learned over the years that when I change the parents, I change a whole lifetime. I can work with a kid a little bit and make some kind of impact, but if I change the parent, I can walk away and that family will be successful. So we really need to focus on that. But they don't trust their environment, maybe because they didn't have, they moved 10 times when they were children. They never had things that they got to keep. If their parents were drug addicts, they sold their things to get drugs. So they don't trust the environment. So it's really important that they learn that. And they deserve to have their feelings met. Big picture. Now, there's a lot of research on this. A lot of people who've been traumatized as children do not use and access their frontal lobe. So that makes them situational. So you can have 10 nice things happen to you. This is good, this is good, this is good, this is good. And one bad thing happened, boom, because all the other stuff goes away. And so what I've done with some perpetrators, when you get their permission to say, you have their partner say, big picture, honey, and you give them a hand signal, and then when you say big picture, honey, they have to stop and write down all the good things that happened in the day with that one bad thing, and then they have to say, overall, how was my day? And that really helps them with the cognitive processing to say, it's not as bad as I think it is. But they don't use big picture thinking. And then what you do is after they think of like one good thing, then they have to add 5 more positive things onto that. So that they can start looking at it. And it really does help them. Replacement skills. As I mentioned, we're not giving them to them. And so I had a dad, he went through perpetrator treatment twice because he didn't get it the first time. But he got so scared that he was going to get in trouble that he became passive. And so guess what started to happen with his adolescent daughter? Payback time. Dad, you remember that time you did this? So all we did is switch the abuser, okay? Because this man was too terrified to make a move because he didn't want to go to jail. So we have to help him learn how to do that. Go have authoritative behavior rather than passive or aggressive. I had a dad who was a victim, and his wife told him, "You beat the kids or I will." So he would be the one that punished the children, because in his mind he was thinking, at least it won't be so bad if I'm the one doing it, okay? Well, finally the relationship was over, and this mother made the children then abuse their father, okay? So it's sometimes we sit there and say, how can someone do this? But when you're in it, sometimes you don't know. So I thought that was pretty sad. So we need to give them replacement skills. And no matter how dysfunctional we think these parents are, they are connected biologically, and we can't do a thing about it. I raised my nephew he's 20 now. I raised him for most of his life, and he still loves his mother no matter what she did to him. So we can take them out, put them in foster care, traumatize them, give them abandonment issues, give them trust issues. They're still going to love their parents, so we need to start working to help the parents learn new skills. They have polarized feelings as a result of it, because they're more traumatized. The more you love someone, the more traumatic it is when you're abused by them. So we need to help them understand the difference between fear and love. And, even though some kids feel the relief of being separated, they also feel the trust and abandonment has been broken down. Part of the solution is breaking through that ego, okay? They have such a well-defended ego because they are afraid they're going to get in trouble. And so that's why I say, when you can look at what they're doing rather than who they are, they're much more receptive to change. And you can't just say, be polite to your children or love your children. That is a concept that they just don't get. You have to say, for today, boys and girls, we're going to say 10 nice things. We're going to praise by saying, you look nice today, or good job today. And I've had parents who I gave them a list of 99 ways to say very good, and they couldn't even read them off the list because they said, this sounds too fake. I can't do this. Because they had never heard it. So it's really sad, because here we're trying to say, you have this expectation to be a better parent, but if you don't give them step-by-step instructions, and I mean literally step-by-step, they don't know what to do. Okay, well, I already said that piece. Reorganization of parental roles with the victims. Okay, if a victim leaves and takes the children with them, they have parented through guilt because the perpetrator was so hard all the time that they became passive. So when you get into this new role, as therapists, you need to be aware of this to help the victims, because they keep continuing to parent passively, and then they either get beat up or the kids need boundaries, plain and simple. They need them. They feel good with them, and if they don't get them, then they start walking all over the victimized parent. A lot of them will say, you couldn't keep me safe when we were in the relationship, so you have no credibility with me. And parents hate this. A lot of victims go back because, at least in the home with the perpetrator, the kid's minded, okay? They don't do that. Once they get out and they have a little bit of freedom to verbalize the way they want to, then they can they have the revolution. They go completely the other way, and that's not healthy either. And when you start saying, no, you have to come in at 10 o'clock, they say, who are you and what did you do with the victim that was here before? Okay, so it's going to be very clear that you have to help the victims anticipate that this is going to happen, because if you don't help them anticipate that their kids are going to explode, they're going to start emoting, they're going to run back, because it's safe. It on some levels is safer. They need to become protective, alert, and engaged. I had a victim one time tell me, after her child reported that daddy tried to drown me, I guess the father would push the child's head under the water until she couldn't breathe anymore, and then let her up, push her down, let her up. And the victim said, he was just kidding, she needs to toughen up. And I thought, oh, You know, so here we've got the victim buying into this behavior, mainly because she's been isolated, or he. I'm trying to break that because there are men victims. They buy into the perpetrator's behavior and they don't have any other external input. So they tend to start going with what the perpetrator says. So we got to help them understand that there's another way of living. They'll often let the kids slip into an adult role because they just don't want to take on that role, so they'll allow that, and I think that that's very dangerous. You need to have mutual respect for your children, but this is not an equal relationship, and there is a difference. You can ask for input on what you think the family should look like, what they should do, but you have to have the final say, and victims, sometimes they don't do that. They just assume that the kids know as much as they do. You got to give them esteem building exercises, because conflict to them has always meant, confrontation to them has always meant conflict. So they don't know how to confront their children with the behavior. I see this, I work in a rehab center as well, and I see this with a lot of the women that live there, is they listen to everything they're told. They don't have an opinion of their own. And why would that be? They were always controlled. They didn't have, their opinion didn't matter. So how do you re-engage a person and say, what do you think about that? Because they say, I don't know. I remember clearly, because I grew up with, both my parents were alcoholics and they were abusive to one another. And I was in the Navy, and this guy said, what's your opinion on that? And I said, I don't have one. And he said, young lady, you need to always have an opinion. Okay, if he could only see me now. The victim, we're going to talk about characteristics of a victim over the next few slides. And basically, we're working with conditioned responses that we have to desensitize the victims to. And just as an example with my nephew, he had been threatened to being thrown out of a moving car, and he had a seatbelt on. He was 4 years old, and I said, what did you do? And he said, I did what you told me. I never took my seatbelt off. But as a result of that one conditioned response, he would not get out of a car if the engine was running. Okay, he absolutely refused to get out of the car. So I took him into the garage, and I shut the garage door, and I turned on the engine, and I had him roll down the window. And for 2 days, because this way the car can't move, for 2 days I had him looking out the window, and then I had him open up the door with the garage door shut for 2 days. And then I opened the garage door and had him look out the window, and we kept doing that till he could finally open the car door with the car in park, because he had been so conditioned to be afraid with that one trial learning. So this is what we're dealing with these traumatized people. And it's going to take time to change. We can't change this overnight. One of the things that victims have a lot of times is depression. And when we try to help them become empowered, they get really scared. So I recommend motivational talks, inspirational books, and interactive classes, so that they get an opportunity to try to get out of that helplessness and hopelessness. A lot of them, and how many people in here know bipolar people now? You got anyone? Yeah, we got a lot of bipolar people now. And I'm convinced it's post-traumatic stress disorder in a lot of these cases, and that they're just reacting because of the stress. But that's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor. But they have anxiety and hypervigilant reactions. They have learned. If you are walking around like this because you're terrified all the time, how do you stop and learn? How can you slow your brain down when you're in a war zone and you don't know from 1 minute to the next if you're going to get hurt? Okay? And for kids, who cares what 2 times 2 is? I had a little boy one time said he was failing in school, and I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I try to stay up all night to keep my mom safe, but I always fall asleep. And then he would go to school because he was up all night, and he would pass out in class. And then the teacher said he was lazy and stupid and didn't care. And I'm sitting there going, wow, if they only knew. Because they don't take the time. We have a zero tolerance policy now in school, so the teachers don't take the time to do that. So yoga, meditation, and relaxation techniques work really, really well. With kids, I do journeys where I have them breathe in through their nose and out through their mouth, and they can change like the colors of the fish underwater, or they can ride on the back of a Pegasus horse, and you can watch them just learn how to regulate their breathing and get back down to a place that's safe. And you can do that with regular victims, the adult victims too. They have a poor self-image. They're so used to the external input that they got that we have to replace that. And they're not going to understand how to deal with that for a while, because when you've been told you're worthless, you're no good, why do you think people understand the negative better than the positive? They hear it more. Do we ever scream, "You're perfect. You're the greatest person I ever met"? No, we don't. But it gets in. And so it's going to take more time to change that. So we have to introduce new input, external input, and replace the old information. I use positive affirmations as much as possible, but I don't say I'm proud of you. I say you must be proud of yourself. Because when you do that, then what it translates to them is I must be proud of myself. Because when you say you're no good, they say I'm no good. So you need to use you statements in the positive. They're incompetent. They feel incompetency a lot of times because they've been browbeaten. And there is nothing better than a wilderness training and assertiveness training for that. Because I had been a victim as a child and I was a victim in my marriage, I worked for the Head Start program, and they said, you're too passive and everyone's walking on you. So they all pitched in and gave me an assertiveness training course. And I came out and they just said, we created a monster. It just was, and they still, 20 years later, they still say that. Fear of failure, this is a huge, huge one. Little mistakes could get you in big trouble. I had a little boy who literally spilled a glass of milk. I have a whole new meeting for Don't Cry Over Spilled Milk, because his father raped him and called him a bitch the whole time he was doing it because he spilt a glass of milk. Okay? Sometimes the consequences are so severe. I had another kid who didn't take his puppy out, and he puddled on the floor. And the perpetrator beat the puppy and said, this is what happens when you don't do what you're supposed to. Other people get hurt. So they learn very early not to try or to over try. It's better, if I do everything right, maybe no one will get hurt. So, or I'm not even going to try, because if I fail, I'm going to get it. So it's really important to understand that, because it could jeopardize their safety. So what you have to do is help them learn how to laugh at themselves. Make them think that it's okay to make mistakes. They have poor social skills in a lot of times because they've been isolated. They don't know what to do. So how do we introduce them to, I always said I'm going to write a book. I'm going to dedicate half to men and half to women, called How to Depolarize Your Jerk Magnet, okay? But you have to know what that is, because if you keep going back to relationships and you haven't fixed the one you're in, then you're going to keep finding the same person. I worked on a video a few years ago, and the videographer said all these victims are the same. They just have a different face. He thought that we put them all in a room and had them plan it, but they were telling stories that were remarkably the same, So I think it's almost a profile. I think we could profile some of these perpetrators. Poor eye contact. Usually eye contact could be considered confrontation, and that could get you hurt. So a lot of them will not make eye contact. Victims, I had a woman tell me one time that she had to walk with her eyes at her husband's feet. She had to walk 2 feet behind him and keep her feet to the ground, because if she made eye contact with anyone, she got beat. So, I mean, the conditioned response, and you sit there sometimes and you go, that guy was a psychologist too. Pretty scary. I won't even tell you some of the other things he did to her. They have an overactive startle response. Anyone, if you go hello and they jump, they've had some kind of trauma, because that just shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't be in that high state of alert all the time. So it's about getting them down to that level too, because even criticizing them at that point could make them overreact and overrespond. So we have to help them with, and that's through self-defense courses. Now I took a self-defense course, and when I first joined, because the woman said, you need to do this for your victims. So I went and I said, man, this woman is angry. This is the most angry woman I ever met. And I was going to drop out because I didn't want to deal with this. But what I ended up finding out is, because anyone going through the victimization process, they have to go through the grieving process, right? Well, how do you get there until you're mad? You have to get mad at what happened to you so that you can fix it. And it was really remarkable at the end of this course. 2 women didn't change. Or actually, that's a lie. 2 people didn't get better. Everyone else changed and was more calm and more relaxed. One woman became an angry animal. She never got down to where she needed to be. And the other one stayed exactly the same. But there were about 12 women that I watched. They'd been rape victims. So it was really neat to watch them change. But they have to get angry. You have to get mad that you got hurt. You don't want to stay mad, but you got to get to a place where you know you didn't deserve this. Okay, I already said that one. Poor impulse control. This a lot of the time develops in childhood, where you're looking for external things to meet internal needs. And I just said this last week to a woman, or actually it was on Valentine's Day. Her wonderful boyfriend, who is truly wonderful, brought her like a gazillion presents. And I said, when you need that many external things, it means something's missing inside, and that's when people overshop and overeat, because they're looking for something external to meet that need. Unfortunately, that never gets satiated, because you just need half hour after people go shopping, they need more. It doesn't make them happy. Meltdowns, they'll react inappropriately and they don't have the ability to cope. So we need to help them with replacement skills. Regressive behavior, people will go back to a time when they felt safe. And I see this all the time: bedwetting, talking like a baby, acting like they're incompetent because they felt safe at that point. So we have to lower our age expectations. I hear women and say, oh, he's acting like a baby. He's 8 years old. He knows how to do that. Well, he might be 8, but because of the trauma, he's only 3. And if you have to go back, like someone said earlier, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to go back and meet those basic needs. Our children should be pushing away from us. We should not be pushing away from them. And that's the bottom line. And I remember when I first got my nephew, I was dating a man, and he said, I asked 10 of my friends, and they said, it's inappropriate that you sleep with your child. And I said, are your friends' children effed up? He goes, of course not. I said, then tell them to shut up. I didn't ask you to take a poll. And I said, I could find 10 friends that say that it's okay. And I said, if he's sleeping with me when he's 16, then we'll get therapy, But, and you know what, right around 9 or 10, it was icky to be with me, He's just like, ew, I'll sleep in my own bed, thank you. So, but we have to go back and meet those needs of safety. And I really think we expect too much from kids. So we have to lower the expectations. A lot of kids and victims will manipulate to get their needs met. We're talking about that power and control. Victims will manipulate to get their needs met because they think that's the only way they can get them met. Unfortunately, when they do that, then they feel bad because they don't like the way they got their needs met. So then that contributes to the low self-esteem and low self-worth and makes it worse for them. So it's like a vicious cycle. Some conflict management training and communication classes would work well for that. And we're going to get into some concrete things to do with the kids. Kids have a hard time reacting to the world when they witness domestic violence, and depending on the level of trauma and the amount of support they got, that's what's going to determine whether or not they survive. And a lot of the cases that I work with adults who've been victimized as children, I say, why did you make it? And they said, because one person cared about me. One person said, you're a good person. And that's what we have to do. You won't see the long-term effects of what you're doing right now. Not in all cases. You have to wait. And if they don't make the news, then you did your job. And it varies from one child to the next. I can't stand these cookie cutter things that we do with these kids. Let's see. Mistrusting child. These are the ones that get in trouble. And see, these are the ones we see the most because of the zero tolerance in school. They get in trouble. That's stupid. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then what happens is the teachers get really upset because they say this is a defiant child and they don't belong in my classroom. I had a situation, it was really sad, a couple years ago, 2 drug addict parents. One was in recovery, one wasn't. They got a divorce. 3 days after the divorce, we have what's called CSAP score testing in Colorado, and he had not slept for 3 days, so he took some no-dos to school. And some of the kids said, oh, can I have some of those? And there was a teacher out to get him because he thought he was a jerk. He thought the kid was a jerk, 12 years old. And he got him for distribution of a controlled substance. And didn't suspend him, expelled him from the 6th grade. Expelled him. And I said, what's going to happen to this kid? I mean, that's going to add to his sense of self-esteem and self-worth. And I tried to advocate for him. And this teacher sat there with just the greatest smug look on his face, like, I got you. You know, really personalize this kid's behavior. It was very, very sad. So it ends up, it's this vicious cycle where the adult feels that you're bad, so then you feel you're bad. Les Brown said to feel worthy by permission. You know, and he's a great speaker who was told he was retarded in the 4th grade, and he spent his whole life in special ed until a teacher in high school said, you're not retarded. You're smart. And he said, the sad thing is it took another adult to tell me I was worthy. I couldn't do it on my own. I was a kid. We tell kids, listen to your adults, don't talk back, respect your elders, and we're always right. So when someone says you were a loser, how do you come up from that? How do you make it out of there? And then some kids become targets. That was me. I got abused at home, and then I went to school and got the crap kicked out of me until I was a junior. And then some girls that was really tough in the school said, if they're picking on you, they're picking on me. And I never got hit again. So, but we become targets because this is what you do as a victim, right? And kids see that. They pick that up and say, ha, I'm going to get her. No, everybody. I got lassoed by a young man and drugged down a sidewalk and had sidewalk burns on both sides of my body, and I couldn't even go home to tell my parents because they were drunk. I had no one to go to. So, no, it wasn't just girls. It was all anybody. But you become the future victims if you don't get the education that you need. And I'm going to be showing one segment of a documentary I was in this year called There's No Place Like Home, and I talk about this. We can take children out of a violent environment, but it's going to take years to take that violent environment out of the child. We can't think just because they left that everything's going to be okay. So we have to be more tolerant and compassionate when they're having their meltdowns. Punishment doesn't work either, guys. These people who want to give consequence to children from family violence, you're wasting your time. You're only reinforcing what they already feel. I'm a bad person. You want to punish me? Go ahead. And it cracks me up. It cracks me up how everyone keeps saying, well, I'm going to take away your recess. Go ahead. I don't care. So we need to start, and people say, well, what can you do instead? What I do is, and I've done this so many times, and the kids say, you ruined our lives, because I'll take everything away, and they have to earn everything, so that you're building on their assets rather than taking away. And this one kid said, you ruined our lives, and then about 3 weeks later, he goes, I've got 300 hours of Nintendo time saved up. But he good, but he's only allowed an hour a night, so that was... But they start building towards that piece, It's very, very exciting to earn things rather than have them taken away from you. So we need to look at that. I one time raised my voice in my house, and my kid didn't flinch, but this other kid did. He cowered down into a ball. And I said, it must be really scary when grown-ups yell. And he said, yeah, sometimes they put guns to your head. And I went, wow. So even if you don't think you're scary, that doesn't mean you aren't, okay? You have to understand that each child is different. You have no idea what they've gone through. Oh, anger is just one letter away from danger. And they're like a pot of boiling water. We got to kind of calm them down somehow. We got to get them to a level that they're not in that hypervigilant stage. Negotiation, okay? This works well with kids. You teach them to negotiate. They feel empowered. You can ask them, if they say, can I earn some money? And you say, well, how much do you think you deserve? 20. I think you should get 10. Well, what about 15? Okay, I'll buy 15. They think that they won, but in your head you were already saying, I'll give them $15. You know what I mean? But let them think that they're the ones that are in control. Just like, sorry. Same with choices. I think if you give them choices all the time, do you want to take a bath now or in 15 minutes? It really helps. I'll take in 15 minutes. Maybe they're actually working on something like a really cool picture. And you're saying, go up and take a bath now. I don't want to take a bath now. Then you argue for 15 minutes. Okay? So... why don't you just give them the option and don't argue, They might over or underachieve. I remember a kid one time, he had tried to open a can of beans with a knife on a camping trip, and his abuser said, let me show you what can happen. And he took the knife and started slitting his wrist. And saying, this is dangerous and you were stupid. And then after he got done doing that, he beat the kid. And then the kid joined a ball team after he left the perpetrator. And a coach said, you're a loser, and mister, you're on your way to being a loser. The kid quit the team. He just couldn't bear it. He couldn't bear the embarrassment of being a failure. I use coins, Skittles. This is a really good thing. Anything that will build for kids. Because I had a kid one time said, I'm a very bad kid. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, I'm just bad. So I pulled out some coins, and he couldn't think of anything. So I said, I know, you graffiti. And he said, no, I don't. So I put a coin in the pile. I know, you steal cars. I can just bet you steal cars. I don't steal cars. And I just kept coming up with really outrageous things that he could be doing. And then he said, well, sometimes I don't listen. And I said, okay, I'll give you a penny for that. And put a penny in this pile. But I had this huge pile of good stuff and 1 penny in this other thing. And I said, now, take yourself out of it and look at this pile. Is this a bad person or a good person? And he said, I'm going to have to say this is a pretty good person, But when you're told you're bad, you might not even know why. But you have to be if somebody's saying it, right? So this is a good visualization. I've done it with Skittles, and then give the kids the Skittles so that when they felt bad about themselves, they could eat one and just get that process of, because it's sweet, tastes good, but some people are opposed to using food. I am not. I like food. I've used puzzle pieces too. They like puzzle pieces to build, but so you can represent it. use trophies, lucky rocks, bracelets, anything to let them celebrate who they are. Now, this is important. Use a notebook when you're praising these children. Why do you think you don't want to praise them out loud? What do you think happens? They sabotage, okay? They've been told they were bad their whole life, okay? If you go in wanting to be good to them, and you say, you're such a good person, they don't know what to do with that because their head has said they're bad, their heart's saying they're bad. And if you start telling them they're good, they're good, they're good, then you change one of the two belief systems and they have conflict with that. But when it's on paper, and I did this with my nephew, I used to write things down, and the notebook never goes away. It keeps building and building and building when you put all this good stuff in. And I'd see him walk by, and then one day I went for a run, and I came back, and he was sitting at the table, and he was going through the whole notebook. When it was safe, he could go back and see what a good person he was by looking at the notebook. A verbal only lasts in the moment. And even though it might feel good, and I'm not discounting that you should be verbal, but if you start to see that they're sabotaging, recognize that that's what it is because they don't feel good about who they are. Role playing in a darkened room. Now this helped me. I used to be blind as a bat. LASIK surgery fixed that. But I was always afraid of people's responses to me. So I would take my glasses off so that I could confront somebody, because the scariest part of all this was seeing the reaction on someone else's face. So if you role play in the dark or with a blindfold on where you're taking away that ability to see, and then you help them practice being assertive, it works better. Because when they find out they didn't die, you might want to promise them that won't happen too, so that they'll feel good about it. But it really is about the reaction. But over time, you'll want them to be able to stand up tall. But don't do it at first because it's just too scary. It's too overwhelming. And you can have them. My kid one time said, "Girls don't like me." And I said, "I know why. You want to know why?" And he said, "Sure." I said, "Well, they say hi, you go like this and you run, So I said, I want you to look them straight in the eye. I want you to smile. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to say hi back." He said, "That's all I have to do?" I said, "Yep." Went to school to pick him up that afternoon. 6 women were surrounding him. And I said, "What have I done?" And it never changed after that. He was a girl chaser from that day forward. So it was not one of those things. How much time do I have? 30 minutes? Okay. Because I really want you to see this segment in this video. Self-esteem. Kendall Johnson said this, that the children produce a negative internal dialogue that matches with and is a result of the negative input. And I had a girl that was diagnosed with bipolar. And when you talked to her and you said, "Hi, tell me a little bit about yourself," she says, "Hi, I'm Jessica and I'm bipolar." I'm like, "Oh, okay. That's all you are?" I said, "Yeah." So we sat down and we started thinking of other adjectives for her, okay? And then we made a beaded bracelet that represented all those adjectives so she could wear it. Kids are real concrete. And sometimes the bracelet would slip around, because we did put one on for bipolar too, just so that she would be able to acknowledge part of who she thought she was, okay? But it would turn and twist, and then she could sit and remember that she was something more than that, and I think it's really important, because when you get labeled, sometimes that's what happens. I had a really funny story, and I use this a lot afterwards, because of the way they feel about themselves. They struggle with their ego. And so I had this 6-year-old kid who was getting ready to be expelled from the school bus. So I was called in and I said, "Tell me, what's going on?" He said, "Well, kids call me names, so I have to punch them." Okay. And so I asked him to tell me all the names, and I wrote all the names down because he wasn't big enough to spell yet. And I said, I'm gonna do something with you. I want to practice something with you. And that you have to practice it. You can't just say it. I'm going to call you all these names. I'm going to call you one at a time. And what I want you to do is say, I don't have to believe that. So I said, girly girl. But he had to say it in his head. He couldn't say it out loud. And then I said, sissy. And then I said, now scream it in your head. Scream it so loud that you can't even hear what I'm saying. And pretty soon I was whipping out all these names, and the kid was just, because it wasn't getting in because he chose not to let it in. He did not get expelled from the bus, but his mother called me 2 months later and said, I got to tell you the story. My niece was over, and she called him stupid. And he looked up and said, I do not have to believe that. And I went back to doing what he said. And so, and isn't that part of it? I mean, with the ego, we get so hurt that we feel like we have to fight to defend ourselves. But if you give them permission to not believe it, and you can't say, oh, you don't have to believe that, because that doesn't get it. They have to actually practice saying that. So that's really important. And then you can also say, you might have to take it, but you don't have to take it in. Because you're going to have teachers and other adults who are going to be nasty from time to time with children. And if these children have to believe it just because it came out of a grown-up, there's going to, they have, I think I even have it in here, it's easier to build a child than to repair an adult. We're going to have a lot more therapists to take care of these issues. Establish a sense of purpose and contentment. I mean, a lot of these families, they do not have any sense of purpose. None. You have to practice being happy. I had a class one time. I did this thing Zig Ziglar did on attitude and skill, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit for parents, and I asked them to give me some adjectives on what makes you an effective parent. And almost every class I've ever taught, no one has ever gotten fun. They've never written fun down as an adjective for being a parent. So I said, well, is it an attitude or a skill? Every single person in the class said it was a skill. And I was like, you're kidding me, But think about domestic violence. It's not fun. It is not fun. And if you lose your mojo, when you stay in a relationship like that. So I tell people, run through sprinklers, do whatever it takes. I used to pick one day a week where I would pretend like it was the last day I was going to be on the earth with my child. And that really helped bring me back to earth. And one day it was summer, and he always slept till noon. And I woke up, and I said, this is the morning that I'm going to pretend like this is the last day on the planet. And so he wakes up at 8 o'clock. And I was working on some important reports. And he said, can you take me to the skate park? And I was like, oh, my God. But I did say it's the last time I was going to ever see him. So I drive him over, which was a half an hour, and I drive back, and he had promised me he was going to be there for 4 hours. I start typing on my typewriter about a half hour later, and he calls. He goes, can you come get me? It's so hot out here. And I was like, oh, I just got back. But it was the last time I'm ever going to see him. So I went over, and I'm beeping my horn saying, come on, come on, come on. He goes, come watch my new trick. And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I did this to myself. But then we get in the car, and he's with his buddy, and he goes, can I go spend the day with my friend? I'm like, sure. So I spent 2.5 hours meeting his needs because it might be the last time I ever see him. And it felt good. It felt good to go home. I still got done what I needed to do. And I think we get caught up in that. So teach these parents to do that. And when they can cognitively think differently, it really helps. But they need to learn how to have fun because they don't know. I had a man one time. I was making him blow bubbles in class, and he was a big burly guy. He goes, I ain't doing it. And I said, yes, you are. You won't get a certificate. And by the end of class, he's like, can I take home the bubbles? He just didn't know. He didn't know how to have fun. So you got to help him get there. Gaddafi said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. I really believe that. I think that we get so caught up in our own misery that when we go out there and see that there are people that are worse off than us, it really helps us out. And we get a greater sense of purpose and value. I think I'm close to the end. Yeah, this is it. Okay, I want to show this it's 12 minutes. I'm only doing my segment and if you want a copy of this documentary, it's through You've Got the Power .org. You can get it off the internet. Let's see. Does someone want the video guy here? Can he help me figure out how to turn this on? There it is.
All the faces have slowly faded. All the blanks have been shaded. I'm walking down this desolate road, trying to find my setting, my mode. I know I'll make it, but what for? And when I get there, will it be the right door? Pieces and images missing and shattered. Can I pick them up and have them gathered? Can I find myself and my soul? Will I lose control and fall in a hole? I can never have what I really wanted. My hopes, wishes, and prayers to above. I've been to so many therapists and psychologists and all that, and just never really helped me as much as just sitting down and getting it out what I really have to say. Because I couldn't really ever just open up to people. You know, I was just too scared to open up to people. And when I sit down here by myself and just write by myself, and just everything gets out, you know. I don't have to worry about what I'm saying. I can say whatever I want, however I feel, and it just helps me a lot. So.
Catland is also a survivor of domestic abuse, but his path is very different from that of Denise. Catland has gone down a road of self-doubt and destruction for most of his life. As a toddler, he was neglected by his mother and beaten by his mother's boyfriend. His Aunt Christina rescued him when he was a young boy and became his legal guardian. Christina has given Catland a home and helped him to deal with his inner demons.
When he was a little boy, every time he did something bad, I'd make him get paper and write. We started out, you had to write, "I am a good boy," 100 times. Do you remember that?
Yeah, jeez.
But I would make him, because I didn't want him to...
That was the worst punishment.
I didn't want him to equate his behavior with who he was as a person. I wanted that to be separate, you know, and I would make him write every time he had a bad day. And then he just started doing this. I mean, he went far beyond what I would have ever imagined you could do.
I draw and I play guitar, and those are good outlets for me too. I just love doing them. I don't know, it's just, I like filling my time with stuff like that.
I'll tell you something about his artwork and his poetry. It saved his life a lot of times because I did a lot of room searches and I found a lot of stuff that was disturbing, and at that point I could work on helping him because I didn't always know what was going on in his head. But when I would find a drawing that would, I mean, you got some pretty scary drawings, you know, and the poetry, some of it would be, you know, really bad. So that's when I knew I needed to do something. It was getting too bad.
The trauma in Catland's childhood shattered his sense of self and basic trust in life. He suffers from anxiety, fear, and shame, all common symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder.
I can't remember a lot of it. I think my mind tries to block it out. No, I don't know. I think that happens with a lot of kids. Their brain just tries to forget it, but I remember them always fighting, him chasing her through the house and smashing her into the wall and getting pissed that dinner wasn't ready and throwing stuff and screaming at me, and he would come back, he would get mad at my mom and come take it out on me. I don't know.
Catland's relationship with Christina has been a source of resentment and jealousy for his biological mother. Although she couldn't take care of him, she made him feel guilty for living with Christina. This has created more pain and added confusion for Catland.
She would tell him, if it weren't for your aunt, we could be a family. You know, your aunt didn't want to have children of her own, so she took you. She's using you as a social experiment to prove that you can take children away from their biological parents and they'll still turn out okay. This all made him very angry at me, and it was a constant thing. But then she would disappoint him, like not send him a birthday card. She didn't call him for graduation, just to hurt him, because she knows that that's important to him. A few years back, he had said, if you just give up the control and quit being a freak about it, I could go live with my mom. And I said, okay, I relent. I said, I don't want to, but if you tell your mom to go get the papers, I'll sign them. Because all my sister ever had to do is take a parenting class to have him back. That's all she ever had to do. But she let me take the blame. So what she did was, he called her all excited. I can come home, I can come home. And she said, I'm not sure, Catlin, you made my life hell. I don't think I want you.
The repeated rejection by his mother sent Catlin into a downward spin, week-long alcohol and drug binges, and a suicide attempt. When he was at rock bottom, his father committed suicide.
I don't know what was going through his head when he stuck the barrel in his mouth and changed from live to dead. The police couldn't get there in enough time. By the time they pulled up, he lay in a puddle of bloody slime. That's the most selfish thing a parent can do. He should have thought of Bobby Joe before he cocked and blew. He was never my dad anyways, but I'm still half of him, and I don't know what to say. For if hell is real, he is in a corrupted world.
Christina herself is a survivor of domestic violence. She watched her mother suffer at the hands of her father, and later in life, she was beaten by her own husband. In contrast to her sister, who has not been able to break the cycle of violence, Christina has overcome her past and has made a profession out of helping victims of family violence.
I started because I said, how does someone smart and confident and competent as me get into something like this? How did this happen to me? And it was basically, I watched my parents do it, and it was normal. It was just an average part of life. And well, maybe I deserved that because I was flirting with somebody, or maybe I said good morning the wrong way and I knew he was uptight, things like that. You start to take the ownership of the abuse. So I basically said, this happened in my childhood, and if I want to see the cycle broken, we can't focus on the adults as much. We have to focus on the kids. We asked the victim why she stays. One of the things we can do if we want to help change things is ask, why does the batterer hit?
Christina is a well-respected author and speaker on family violence, especially its effects on children. She is convinced that if we treat the children and help them to heal, we as a society can also heal.
I say to people, you can take a child out of a violent environment, but it'll take years to take the violent environment out of the child. And what our system does so often is once you leave, they think everything's going to be okay, and then the ball is dropped. And that's when the real work begins, because this will be the first time that the kids will be able to emote. So they're going to go from being completely passive to completely aggressive to try to get these feelings out. And I think what we have to do is make parents understand that everything they do and say impacts their children.
All I want is to get along, but I guess I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I have no one to care, but then I sit and think you were always there to help me out with anything I needed, quick to forgive every time I pleaded. So I guess my mind likes to play tricks on me, covering my eyes with...
Catlin knows that Christina has given him a second chance in life, but he still misses his biological mother and maintains contact with her. One of the things he struggles with is leaving his brother and sister behind when he went to live with Christina.
I think a lot of my depression throughout my whole life is due to me getting taken out of that home, and my brother and my sister, they had to stay there. And that just really, it's like survivor's guilt, kind of. I don't know. It's like, why should I deserve to have a good life and be away from there, and the state won't do nothing about those two? It's like unbelievable. I don't know. It's felt bad, because I knew I had it good, and my sister would call me crying, screaming, mom's running, and mom's running away from Kevin, and he beat her real bad, and I'm scared, and I'm locked in my room, and I don't know what to do, and just crazy stuff, like, and I'm so far away, I'm like on the other end of the phone, like, what the hell can I do, you know?
There is one thing that Catlin feels he can do to make amends, and that is to take good care of his own son. He spends time with Kai whenever possible, but was not able to maintain a relationship with Kai's mother. This difficulty in sustaining a trusting relationship is part of the trauma he experienced as a child.
Definitely I found my place with my child. That's my place. That's my world now, so that's all I really think about, you know, really care about. It's like I don't really even care as much about myself, you know, I just gotta look after him now, so.
At 19, Catlin is beginning to take control of his own life. He has a job and is enrolled in college. Eventually, he wants to be a writer. But most of all, he wants to be a role model for Kai so that the cycle of violence will finally be broken.
I hold my head up high, release my sigh, no longer crying inside, don't want to die. I walk on and find a fork in the road, seeing that I've reaped what I've sowed. No doubts, no shouts, I now choose wisely. Don't have hate, no one can despise me. I know which way my path goes, now I will follow the route that I have chose. The ending is for my son, because I no longer have to hide, I don't have to want to die, you know, I have a reason to live now, so, yeah.
Thank you very much. So go out and work with these kids. I do have one book out there, and I've got a couple videos here. If you want to see the other 3 segments of this, You Have the Power on the internet has this video, and it's all about what kids experience watching family violence. It's pretty amazing. So, but I just wanted to share mine.